Hello, you're watching QTV and I am Mahmoud Mbouch. According to a UNICEF report, there's a high rate of what they call hidden hunger, that is micronutrients deficiency. So the Food Safety and Quality Authority has developed food fortification regulations and standards to make it mandatory for importers and manufacturers to fortify food products with the adequate levels of the specified minerals and vitamins. So today I have in the studio Mr. Sekou Drame from the Gambia Food Standards Bureau. And here what we're talking about today is about standards in place to ensure that we have healthy and nutritious diet through food fortification. Welcome to the program, Mr. Drame.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mbouch.
That's it. But first, perhaps we clarify, what do we mean by that? What do we mean by the topic? Standards that we have in place for healthy and nutritious diet through food fortification. We've used a few concepts there. Just explain the topic for us.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mbouch. Before answering your question, I would like to say a brief about the Gambia Standard Bureau and what we do.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the Gambia Standard Bureau was established by an Act of Parliament in 2010, but came into operations in 2011 to standardize products and methods that are consumed and produced in the Gambia for every sector. So we have three main mandates. One is standardization, as I said, to standardize our products, methods and services that are produced and consumed in the Gambia. And we also offer conformity services, that is inspection, testing and certification of our products that we produce in the country. So our third main mandate is to provide calibration services, that is to calibrate our weighing and temperature devices to conform to international standards. So in short, this is brief but what the Gambia Standard Bureau does.
So to establish a common system
so
everybody would follow
standards.
Yes,
exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So now coming on to your question, that is regulations and standards in place to ensure nutritious and healthy diet. As you rightly mentioned, there has been numerous micronutrient surveys conducted in the country that has revealed the prevalence of essential micronutrient deficiencies in the country in children below the age of 5 and reproductive young women. And so the survey has revealed that children below the age of 5 are found to be anemic. Some are found to have deficiency in essential micronutrients like iron, vitamin A, etc. So this is why the Food and Agricultural Organization, FAO, sponsored a project called the Food Fortification Project that will help support government's capacity to actually improve our micronutrient deficiency needs of the country. So within the project, they form an alliance called the National Alliance for Food Fortification. It comprises of relevant stakeholders from the public and the private sector, as well as producer and consumer associations and the regulators as well, to develop relevant documents that will address our fortification needs in the country. Yeah. So now the Gambia Standard Bureau, as an implementing partner in the project, has developed standards that will be used as public health strategy to address our micronutrient deficiency needs.
So let me just ask you this. So you mean we've never had this sort of document before? Or is it that we are upgrading now?
Yeah, we've not had fortification documents in the Bureau, but in recent years, we've successfully developed 3 fortification standards, one on edible fats and oil, iodized salt, and wheat flour, because these are essential food vehicles that are consumed by almost everybody in the country. If you don't consume wheat flour, you will have to consume salt or fats and oils. So this is why these food vehicles were selected, because it can be used as a strategy to reach to majority of the population. So this is why the Standard Bureau developed these standards and then come up with requirements that processors will use to fortify their products to address our micronutrient deficiency needs. So recently we've also identified rice as one of the important food vehicles that is highly consumed by a majority of the people in the country. And then currently we're done with the development stage of the standard, and it's currently sent for gazetting to be considered a national standard.
All right, so now this is the key. In your formulation, as it were, of standards, what factors do you take into account? How do you formulate standards? Especially in these areas. Isn't it? Yeah.
Okay, so when developing standard, we have our standard development procedures that we use as a baseline to develop these standards, and we also use other international standard developing procedures like the ISO IEC guide that gives you the guidance and tell you how you should develop these standards. So usually, as I said, the Bureau does standardization in all sectors. So for instance, in the agricultural sector, if we are developing any standard in agriculture, we gather stakeholders in the agricultural sector with the expertise in that particular area to constitute a technical committee that will sit, look at the standard in question, put in their expertise, and then after the standard is done formulating at that committee stage, we will send it for public commenting to have the inputs of other relevant stakeholders in the country that do not have the opportunity to be part of the technical committee at the development stage.
Yes, that's interesting, but here it will be interesting perhaps to know what is, for instance, is the difference between standards and regulations. What is a standard? If you know
okay, basically a standard is a document that set out the requirements, the guidelines to ensure that the products, the services that we offer at production level or any institution that offers services to conform with requirements that will enable them to be fit for purpose. So the Standard Bureau, as I said, is the only mandated body in the country that is responsible for the development of these standards. So standards in nature, they are voluntary. We don't enforce standards, but after development of standards, we work with regulators in every sector. So after we develop our standards, we will engage the regulators because during the development stage, we include them during the development stage. So they also have a take in the development of this particular standard. So, and then after the development, then, we work with them to enforce them. Since they are the regulators, we are only responsible for the development of standards.
That's it. So standards have to do with the quality of a product.
Products.
You're laying certain criteria that one must follow in producing products,
yes, sure.
or distributing or whatever you might call it. That's what it means.
Yes.
But you've said that the enforceability part, I was going to come to that. So if it is strictly a voluntary thing, yes, how do you implement? What does it mean to implement?
Yeah.
If somebody doesn't follow it,
yeah,
and you know that he's not following it, and persuasion has not worked,
yeah.
what else?
So after the development, the first thing that the Bureau does is to sensitize the general public about the presence and the availability of that particular standard. So we go nationwide, sensitize the peoples on the particular standards, the relevance of those standards, so that because one of the factors that contributes to the low adoption of standard is unawareness. People are not sometimes aware of the existence of certain standards. But during our public engagement and our awareness creation, people tend to develop that interest in standards. So it's also a means of getting people to use standards. But we don't stop at creating awareness, but we also work with regulators, as I said, because they are the bodies responsible for enforcing standard. So when a standard is something that is, when a particular standard is supposed to be regulated, the regulators will pick it, turn them into regulations and enforce them. Meaning to say, anybody who is in that particular sector should implement that particular standard by force. For instance, the three fortification standards that we have developed, that's iodized salt, wheat flour, and edible fats and oil. Anybody that is producing these products in the country or importing them should fortify them, because they are turned into regulations. So now they are mandatory upon them to fortify them. So these are some of the strategies that we use to make sure that our standards are being implemented.
So that's it. You've essentially said it. That's the relationship, the difference between standards and regulations. So,
exactly.
So that's it. So everything in many ways begins from standards. As
sure.
it were, that's
exactly.
what we take and turn into regulation that
Exactly.
you must follow.
Exactly.
These ones are enforceable. And that.
Exactly.
So in that sense, these standards, where do they apply? By that I mean, of course, the manufacturers, the producers, but what about the consumers? Would it also, we should be aware that you were actually talking about it, the awareness factor.
Awareness factor.
So it's not simply those who are producing it, it's also those who are consuming it.
Exactly. So looking at the requirements of the standard, standards are not only beneficial to producers and processors, it's everybody who benefits from standards. Because if we develop them, let's say the producers will use it to help them, better produce their products, as well as the processors. But the consumers too, it will create a kind of confidence in that particular product that they are consuming. Because if the Gambia Standard Bureau develop a particular standard, and you as a company, you implement that standard, and your customers are aware that, let's say the wheat flour that I'm consuming has been, let's say, fortified, or it has the processing of the wheat flour has followed standards, then that will create that kind of confidence and trust, between the consumer and the producer. So it's everybody who benefits from standards.
That's it. But as you said, that will depend on the consumer's level of awareness.
Awareness, sure.
So does the Standards Bureau, do you carry out these campaigns of awareness?
Sure. Usually when standards are developed, we send, we advertise in media houses, we publicize them on our website. We have a website and a Facebook page where we publicize the standards. We also engage newspapers and radio stations. So, and also we go on a nationwide sensitization campaign where we visit local radio stations and then talk about the relevance of the standards and what the standard is trying to address. So these are means of, creating that awareness, among the consumers.
That's it. So what's the picture? What do you think is the awareness level? Do you have any picture? Because certainly when we go to the statistics, because we are told that micronutrients deficiency is high, so one can extrapolate that perhaps the awareness level is not that high. So how do you evaluate how successful your campaigns are?
Comparing the data between the different surveys conducted in the micronutrient level has been successfully increased among women and children because of the existence of standards. Because since they are mandatory, every producer or importer complies with the requirements of the standards. So automatically it has created that level of improvement in the micronutrient deficiency level. So at least things are changing.
Things have been improving.
Sure.
But yet they're quite high.
Sure.
So let's put it this way. So obviously the Gambia Standards Bureau, as you said, you're working with other agencies.
Stakeholders.
That's it. In the end, who are you the coordinator? I mean, if you have so many different players, so who is the coordinating body? How does it work?
For the development of standards?
Yes, for the enforcement of standards, the implementation of standards. Who is the coordinating body between all of these players?
During the development, the Bureau is the secretariat. It's responsible for the coordination of stakeholders, all the stakeholders in that particular sector. But as I said, we are not responsible for enforcing, so we leave that part to the regulators to coordinate and make sure that standards that have been turned into regulations are adhered to, and everybody respect and implement the standards that have been turned into regulations.
Now this is interesting. For instance, I thought that the FSQA was a regulator.
Sure.
Is it not?
Sure.
Because you keep saying you develop these standards and then you turn them to the regulators. So what I hear, what you're talking about is, with you, wherever it comes to perhaps food products, in all sectors, as it were, so you are the ones who will set the standards.
Exactly.
But perhaps you have all these different sectors with different regulators. Is that what you're saying?
Sure. We have the Bureau currently have about 13 to 14 technical committees. One of the technical committees is the Food and Agricultural Technical Committee that is responsible for the development of food and agricultural standards. We have the Petroleum Technical Committee. We have Building and Construction, Electrotechnicals, and you name them. So, for instance, the Petroleum Technical Committee, whenever they develop any standard on petroleum, PURA, as the institutions that is responsible for that sector, would use the standards, turn them into regulations, and they are responsible for the enforcement of those standards.
So this is how you do it. That is interesting. So then one wonders, this project, as it were, how long does it have a timeline? Or?
Yeah, it has been here for the past 2 to 3 years, and it's supposed to end this coming February.
This February it will
2022.
2022.
Sure.
But then what happens? By then, does it mean that we are already implementing and you had already structured in a way that perhaps if the funders go, you can survive, but then one wonders where would you get funding?
Yeah, sure. Because as I said, within the project, they form an alliance that includes, public and private sector, consumers, producers, processors, as well as regulators. So they conducted a survey, for instance, in the areas of standards and regulations. They conducted a survey on the status of standards and regulations in the country, and came up with recommendations, as to what relevant standards to be developed. And these standards, after development, have been turned into regulations. So in the project, we also have other implementing partners that are responsible for other components of the project. So each of those partners have their sustainability plans as to how to sustain their activities after the project phased out. So that is how it is. So each IP implementing partner has their own, sustainability plan, so that when the project elapses, the activities can still continue.
The activities will still continue.
Yes.
So that's it. Then one wonders. So now the overall aim or objective in the end, what is it? To make sure that everybody is provided for with food, that is adequate in terms of its nutrients, nutrients, the vitamins and minerals that they require.
Yeah, so the overall objective of the project is to ensure, as the theme of the program goes, to ensure a healthy and a nutritious diet for everyone. Because this thing came about due to findings of a survey that shows, prevalence of essential micronutrient deficiencies within a vulnerable population of the country. So the project came to address the micronutrient deficiency needs. So that's one of the aim. And another thing is to support government's effort in ensuring that everyone have access to healthy and nutritious food.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
And this is the key. But then when you go and sort of diagnose the situation, you realize that everyone doesn't. Then you try to look for what are the problems. So you realize that you will have your standards, but in the end, it also depends on political will. It depends on other players, as it were, to make sure that we apply.
Sure.
We comply as it were, with standards and regulations.
Sure.
That must be sort of frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah,
to people like you guys who work in the Standards Bureau. So you must have standards.
Yeah, sure.
So obviously then you are constantly in conversation with other stakeholders to make sure that they apply them.
Exactly. Yeah, sure, exactly. So of recent, for instance, the Food and Agricultural Sector or the Food and Agricultural Technical Committee is supposed to embark on an awareness creation among relevant stakeholders. So we are planning to visit every agency or institution in the agricultural sector to sell our standards to them. Sell in a sense, we will tell them the standards that are available and the potentials of the Bureau to develop any standards in the agricultural sector. So that effort is something that we are constantly working on to make sure that stakeholders are not only aware of the standards, but the potentials of the Bureau to develop standards in every sector, for every product in those sectors.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just wondering, I wonder if you sort of maybe also go to schools. That's where you begin to change mindsets.
Mindsets, exactly.
Is that part of the? So
it is part of the plans, but then during the development stage, we don't leave anybody out, because the academia also are relevant stakeholders in standard development. So we make sure that whenever we are developing standards, we have them on board to have their say. And it is not only to give us their expertise on the standard, but also go back to their different institutions and then sell the standards to them.
To know what these things mean, to make them to be mindful of it, and then perhaps they will apply it in their own lives, as it were.
Sure.
Yes, we are coming towards the end of the program. Any aspect of the subject that I haven't touched that you think that it is important for us to talk about?
I think we've almost talked about every important thing. So I think what I want to say is to encourage people out there, especially the consumers, to look out for products that are fortified, because and processors as well. Because if I am a bread producer, and my only interest is to buy wheat flour, I might not care whether the wheat flour is fortified or not. But I'm encouraging such people and everybody, including myself, to look out for products that are fortified, especially wheat flour, iodized salt, and edible fats and oil and rice.
That's it. Because in the end, it's about our health.
Health, exactly. Exactly.
Because it's important, perhaps, to just touch a bit on this. We know that certain, what do they call it, diet-related non-communicable diseases.
Exactly.
With this significant diabetes, I'm told, and anemia, and that sort of thing. So it's important to dwell on this when they are really mindful of what the food needs to have, then they're taking care of their own health.
Exactly.
Maybe we don't emphasize on this bit, enough. So go into that a bit.
Yeah, so as the saying goes, micronutrients deficiency is a silent killer. You know, you might be eating food thinking that, oh, my stomach is full, but whether the food that you are eating contains the essential nutrients that your body needs is the question. So people need to be mindful. Whatever food that you are buying, you have to make sure that it contains essential micronutrients that are going to help your system to grow well and to build your immune system. Because if you don't have the required essential micronutrients, your immune system can go down, your body can be prone to diseases. So it's important for people out there to look out for, important micronutrients in the food that they consume. As, an example is iron, to avoid anemia, vitamin A, folic acid, and the vitamin B family. So these are all essential micronutrients that our body needs. So the standards are here to recommend the level that needs to be added to each of these fortified products that I've mentioned.
That's
so,
right.
Yeah.
The levels, and you specify, and the minerals and vitamins
exactly,
and that sort of thing.
Exactly.
We've come to the end of the program. Thank you very much, Mr. Sekou.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was an informative discussion we had.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you very much, viewers, for joining us. Until the next time, I am Umudumud.